Hello, my name is Mitchell Snyder, and this is my chapter summary report for chapter 1. So, we'll just get into it. I know that you like to have the pages for your chapter summary report, but I bought the online book instead of getting it in person, so I don't really know how to. It's kind of just a wall of text, so I can't really say the page numbers, but to me, it seemed like the overarching point of the chapter was just obviously an introduction, kind of summarizing and making the case as to why um, communication is very, very prevalent in sports. Um, and we can kind of see that with would be my first point, my first takeaway, which is um, like I said, just the overarching point of communication being important and just how important sports really is. Because communication in sports can't be important if sports is not important. And there's always been a debate about whether sports matters. It's just kind of people who don't really follow sports think it's dumb for the money that's spent on sports to be spent like that. But we see that with quotes. This quote of in chapter 1. Moreover, despite its uniqueness as a spectacular event, the World Cup highlights the degree to which sport plays a prominent role in the daily lives of an overwhelming majority of Americans. I would say, it's fair for people to not, if they don't understand sports or if they don't particularly like sports, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. Sorry for the camera shakes. I think everybody's allowed to have their own opinions, but you can't knock or you can't deny that sports is such a huge part in the lives of not only Americans but the world. I mean, the World Cup is one of the most televised or watched things on television every 4 years. So it really just kind of the main takeaway in the introduction of this chapter is, sports, whether you like them or not, play a huge role. And I'll use this quote for the same point. Youth sports, for example, are among the most common activities for boys and girls throughout their childhoods. The Women's Sport Foundation reports that 75% of boys and 69% of girls participate in organized team sports. And it's just little kids, whether, I've grown up with, I have family friends who participate in sports, who are their kids participate in sports, and the kids are forced into it. But it would obviously a good portion of those kids want to be playing baseball or football or soccer or basketball or volleyball or any of the number of sports. So, yeah, I think the first point here, the first takeaway is that sports is a huge thing. So then we jump into what I would say the second takeaway is sorry, let me read this quote again. The most, so we'll jump into the most televised sporting event and actually the most watched thing every year, which is the Super Bowl. Out of all the sporting events, the Super Bowl is the most watched, and it's because of the communication aspect of the game. At most, I would say most. I would guess that most people watch the Super Bowl as they are fans of football, but there is I would say there is a significant percentage of people who do watch the Super Bowl because of the commercials. The Super Bowl is known for having wacky and hilarious and very creative and unorthodox commercials during the game, And there are legitimately a good number of people out there who watch the Super Bowl because of the commercials. And that's why I think that's like one of the first main topics or main points of communication in sports, in terms of people are watching for the commercials. That's how intertwined the game and the communication of sports is. So now we'll move on to topic 3. For the later videos, I will figure a way out to do this camera better. Topic 3. This one comes from the Bob Costas interview in the chapter. And this one, it kind of... This one I would love to dive deeper in to personally, but I feel like the video is already going to be pretty long, so I'll cut it short or summarize it. But the Bob Costas interview hits on a point. He gives the quote of course, the coverage has changed. It is more highlight-driven because of the presumed shorter attention spans of today's fans. And that is huge in terms of communication, because that is entirely communication. The point being made here is, as the younger generations, as each younger generation becomes the new generation, or as each generation goes by, the average attention spans of people are going down. People are having less attention spans. Personally, for me, I think this is because I would say it's the capitalism. I think it's the market. I think companies are realizing that they can give a product, or they can find ways to give their product or sell their product in shorter way or less time-consuming ways. And of course, people don't like having their time wasted. So the average attention span is going down because the older generations are used to having to be more patient and waiting, whereas now these companies I'm talking all companies, are providing or caring to these younger people, or targeting these younger people to find the best bang for their buck in terms of having the shortest amount of time to get their product across, while also making it as spectacular as possible. We see that on Twitter, when originally Twitter was 140 characters. You could just give your thoughts. We see that in sports. Highlights are posted to Twitter. Highlights are posted to Facebook. I think one of the original examples of this shorter attention span for highlights would be ESPN's top 10 plays every day. Every day it's the top 10 plays. So instead of, watching and through these entire games or, whatever, you could go to ESPN SportsCenter, and every morning the top 10 great plays, and, you were in and out in a couple minutes from that segment. So now we'll go to, I believe, topic 4? Topic 3 or topic 4. Another thing about the communication aspect in this chapter talks about the connection between the United States and football. Obviously football is not primarily American, but the NFL is solely American, North American, United States, and the parts of the United States, obviously the southern part, have cultivated football more than anybody else. And the quote, in 1975, Michael Reel published a study of the Super Bowl called Super Bowl Mythic Spectacle. In that article, Reel explained that the televised broadcast of the Super Bowl was arranged to emphasize the mythology of football as a ritualized expression of American identity. So basically, all the way back in 1975, the NFL was using the Super Bowl to connect it with the American identity, which I think incredibly is is incredible advertising, brand connections, because if you connect anything with the American identity, the people who are more traditional in the country that you are doing that. So in the United States, people who are more traditional, more patriotic are going to have more favoritism, more connections, more support of football, regardless of how much they would like it or not if there was no connection. So I think in terms of communication, that is huge for the NFL to connect football with basically patriotism or American identity. Moving on, we see that the amount of connection that current media has allowed in terms of communication between the fan and the sport. Sanderson 2011 contends that social media is especially relevant to sport because it breaks down some of the barriers that previously prevented fans from interacting with the sports they follow. I personally have used this in the last hour as in my apartment. I do not get Cincinnati Reds games. I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan. I don't have a way to watch the Reds unless I want to go to a restaurant every night, which I can't afford. But I can't go to, I can't watch it on the TV. I don't have it on cable in my apartment. And I'm within the, not district, but I'm within the market for the Reds. So I can't download the app that would let me buy to watch the games. I would have to get cable. So I use Twitter. Twitter has a thing that lets me, if you follow teams, it lets you see when that team is playing and the current score when you check the feed. And that's crazy. I don't have to wait to read the newspaper the next morning. I don't have to shell out hundreds of dollars a year to watch every baseball game, or I don't have to wait for the ESPN side scroller to show me the Reds game. At a moment's notice, whenever I want, is convenient towards me, I can go to Twitter and see the score. I mean, and you can still do that with, I can still go online. I can go to ESPN, or I can go to MLB.com and see scores of the games I want to see. And I think that's a huge part. It seems really small, but to get updates at a moment's notice is a huge thing for communication. And then lastly, a huge heavy debate in the last couple of years has been politics and sports, but people don't understand that they when people don't agree with a player's statements, they make a statement like, oh, keep politics out of sport, just stay in your lane. But what people don't understand or are maybe hypocritical about is presidents or politicians usually use sports. They communicate and try to help get their message through sports to make them seem more likable, get more voters. As the quote we see here is, presidents routinely throw out pitches at baseball games, invite championship teams to the White House, and appear for interviews during broadcast in order to foster identification with American citizens. The idea being here is you're not going to unwind or separate sports from politics, because sports are so popular. Politicians are going to do everything they can to get the votes that they need. So if they can get a few more 100,000 votes by going to a Yankees game and throwing out the first pitch or talking in the seventh inning stretch or whatever, they're gonna go and do that. And that is probably the one of the biggest impacts of communication in sports. So that will wrap up my Chapter 1 summary. If this was too long, I'm really sorry. If it was too short, let me know. Thanks.